Welcome to Alive Agency's bite-sized video series, and we're going to be discussing the latest trends, strategies, and insights in the world of marketing. My name is Sophie, and I'm joined today by Anthony and Nick, and we're going to be sharing 3 valuable insights today for growth marketing in a startup environment. So we're going to take it off at first with Nick, number 1. Let's hear it.
Thanks, Sophie. Growth marketing in a startup environment, man, there's so much noise in this space and so many people telling you what the right thing to do is. And, at the end of the day, they're probably not fundamentally wrong in a lot, but it's so easy to get like sucked in or in the wrong direction. And so, to your point, Soph, what we want to do is just kind of maybe provide 3 really pretty high level insights from our point of view, having done this for a long time, on some things that you can do as a marketer in the startup space. And I think number 1 is focusing on a niche of audience members, right? I think one of the challenges especially on the brand side is, when asked about who's your customer, they're like, anybody, right? Anybody that could buy is our customer. And I think you get kind of lost in the delusion that everybody is in fact your customer. And when you're marketing to everybody, you're really marketing to nobody because it's just kind of noise. And so I think key takeaway number 1 is find a niche and create marketing content and copy and landing pages that focus on a very small sector of your customers so that you can communicate to them well. Anthony, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Nick, spot on. I think, create that customer segment and really own it, right? Everything you do, your product development, everything, is focused on who that customer is and what makes them happy and what's going to keep them coming back to your brand, right? So you're spot on, right? That customer segment, narrow that focus down.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I think of it in fishing, right? It's like if I take the boat out and I throw a big wide net over a segment of a lake and I pull it back, I don't know if I may catch something. I may catch a bunch of different things, but I may catch nothing. But if I throw a line in with, like, this is a bass lure and I'm going for a bass in the lake and I know what I'm doing, I will probably catch a bass eventually, right? Whereby if I throw the net, that's like a practical example of kind of what we're talking about, like focus in on a specific segment. And it doesn't mean that you're locked into that segment into perpetuity, right? I mean, I think there's one of the functions here is the ability to be nimble, but I think you have to do it in super niched out segments. I think that's takeaway number 1, right?
Absolutely.
Anthony, I'm going to throw it over to you for number 2 because we've talked about this a lot, but share with the listeners what our second point is.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. And I think this one's really important, right? Because I think very often we see, growth companies, startups, they say we need to go reach that audience, right, that we've identified, and they start with the tactics, right? They it's a ready, aim, fire approach, right? And you don't know what's working. There's no guardrails to that. So point number 2 is start the strategy, build a marketing strategy, business strategy for how you're going to tackle marketing. Right? It's you can't start with tactics. It's got with a strategy, and test and learn strategy is so important for a new company because that allows you over here to take a piece of your budget or your marketing focus and say we're going to test different things, right? And we're going to see what else we can add later or what's going to bite here, but you're not focused just on the approach there.
Yeah. 100%. Anthony, you froze for a little bit, and that's okay. We're rolling, okay? All right. But I'm gonna recap that a little bit because one of the things that I heard you say, I heard you say ready, aim, fire, but I think what you meant to say was ready, fire, aim. And we see that a lot in the client space when they come in and they're like, okay, great, we've got a product, we've got a website, let's go do everything, right? And I think about that from a media standpoint, but also from like a tactic standpoint. Like, let's go digital, traditional, or let's go even within the context of just digital. Okay, let's go on every single platform, and we're gonna dilute our budgets down across 7 different platforms versus focusing on the blocking and tackling and heavy lifting on a specific platform. So kind of similar to our previous point about finding your niche, would be like finding your strategy, right? Strategy is greater than tactics. I think in 10 out of 10 instances, I would recommend establish a strategy, build a strategy, execute on that strategy before you start testing out all these tactics, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's more expensive if you start with the tactics, right? Because you're just throwing money out there. And then it's hard for you to measure and read what is working.
100%. I'll go back to this, and we've said this many times on client conversations, but we want to help them move from firing before they aim to aiming before they fire. And aiming is strategy, right? So ready, aim, fire. And it's so easy to get that as inverted, in especially in the startup space when there's, excitement and newness and things like that. And probably the need for hustle too, right? So we don't, hustle can get in the way of thinking sometimes, and we would like to do both, right? Which actually segues really nicely into our third point. And Anthony, you bring a lot of expertise on this, but I think our point would be you're never too small as a company to leverage a CRM tool. And why? Anthony, tell us why.
Well, first of all, I think that's important. A lot of companies, you're scared of what these CRM tools may cost, and you say, oh, we'll punt that. But there are many tools out there that are not super expensive these days, some even free, right? Depending on your use of it. And you start there because if you're growing, you're bringing new customers into the fold, right? And you want to get those customers into your CRM tool so you can start to understand who they are, what their habits are, and you can talk to them one-to-one, right? So you can start segmenting out. I've got, a product, a small group of customers, and I've got, women and men's products. So I can talk specifically to the guys about a certain product set, or, to the women, and, maybe it's to the athlete or whatever it is, right? Who your customer segment is. You start understanding your customer and can really get that one-to-one communication and feedback loop going.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools that are baked into like e-commerce platforms and in email service providers that are a strong step in the right direction, right? But I think that leveraging, like, e-commerce platforms are built to be e-commerce platforms, and email service providers are built to be email service providers, and they're not a CRM. And so there's a lot of functionality that comes into CRM, even in freemium models and like free platforms that we know of, that you can leverage to really level up your communications with your customer. To your point, that segmentation and even getting that one-to-one feel. So those are 3 things I think that are actionable for smaller startup brands. Number 1 is find your niche. If you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. Number 2 is that strategy is greater than tactics. Remember, ready, aim, fire. Don't invert those. And then number 3 is that a CRM tool is a great way for you to be strategic. So that's it. That's the Alive nugget for this week. Sophie, back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Nick and Anthony. That was really insightful information, especially for startups and really for anybody actually who's like listening to this right now. So thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Soph. See you guys.